What's going on? How are things? Late night? It's not late night. It's a mild evening stream. It's ain't no late night. Although we might not go that long. I was gonna wake up early tomorrow, so you know, we'll see. See what happens. See what happens. If anyone has good on topic questions about technical things, we could do them right now. Is there any use for things like GraalVM and AOT compilation for games? I don't know what AOT compilation is supposed to be, but my preliminary answer is no. Ahead of time. I mean, all compilation is, or most compilation is ahead of time. Classical compilation is ahead of time, so why would you make an acronym for that? Well, even just-in-time compilation is ahead of time because you have to compile it before it could run. That's so crazy. Is that seriously what that means? AOT means ahead of time? Are you kidding me? Sometimes I'm just really glad that I don't know these things. All right. Any on-topic questions while we wait a couple minutes for people to show up? Or should I just forge ahead and do some things? I mean, Minecraft was in Java. I don't know if it's in Java anymore, the new version, but it was. So that's one game that's in Java, but it constantly had problems due to being in Java, so that's not really recommendable. All right, so my tea's boiling. As soon as it's done making boiling noises, we will make programming noises. Do I miss operator overloading when working with vector math? No, because I use operator overloading when working with vector math. How did we implement the Benny Hill mode? I just record solutions to levels and play them back really fast. What have I been up to? Not streaming and generally just working really hard. Okay. So yeah, let's start doing things. When we left off, I had realized in the process of moving, so we had made orientation changes during teleport work better in the new movement system, but I had not done some stuff having to do with skipping stones because I hadn't realized that we hadn't done it. Until I went to start removing these before clonings variables, which we ostensibly wouldn't need anymore. And then I saw these. So what these are is if you clone a skipping stone, you might clone it multiple times. And if you clone it multiple times, you know that different clones need to start skipping in different directions potentially. And you know, the way that it was implemented before, we would actually modify the initial one immediately in the code that was doing the clonings. So we had to save these other values somewhere where we could go get them to compute the new ones because we were overwriting the initial values otherwise. And in the new system, we don't do that anymore. We like issue a transaction that will eventually change the skipping direction and move direction. So we have to do that now. So we did that for other things like being mirrored, but we have to do this now. And then after we make that work, we will move on to general turning stuff. If we have time tonight, maybe it'll be a disaster and I'll have to go to bed before we get there, but I think we'll get there. Oh, let me do a tweet. tweet now, streaming again, doing some programming on turn-based, doing some programming, working on turn-based transactional player movement drop time. If you're interested in that. So, yep, tweeting that, and then we'll go. So, I'm tempted to combine these two directions into one, but I'm not going to. Like, I think they could be combined. Like, anytime you're storing stuff on a transaction that's going to get serialized and et cetera, it's tempting to make data dense, but we're not going to do that for now. What we are going to do is we're going to go back to our move transaction data structure, and where we did all this post teleport stuff, we're going to have more post teleport stuff. We're going to have post teleport rock skipping direction, and post teleport rock move direction. And I believe both of these are only set if the entity type is rock, which is why I put the word rock in here. Let's check that. I'll just delete these for now. Yeah, it's only set if it's a rock. So here we don't actually want to set the move direction or the skipping direction. In fact, this whole thing, well, okay. Single dot move info. We have to stash the information in the move info like we did with this other stuff in the earlier stream. So we're going to copy this hello long name. Whoops. Copy that hello long name and assign that to rock.move direction and post teleport rock. Whoops. That is rock move direction. This is rock dot it's just rock dot skipping direction, as you would have guessed if you were guessing. Okay. So when we make the move that is going to clone a rock. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit confusing. This is not yet cloning. This is like anytime we teleport a rock. Okay, and these are the pre-teleports. So this is not right what I'm typing here yet. So this move direction should be this get reflected vector of this. I don't remember why the mirage is in there, but that's okay. And then post teleport rock skipping direction. We're just going to set down here. Okay. I'm a little worried because already okay. Because remember, these were two different types for some reason. Let's make them these because directions are small. This is direction is an enum, whereas the vector 3 is not. So we're going to say vector to direction here, which will just pick the enum. This is a little bit dangerous because we're not doing a literal translation. But yeah, okay. So we do this. So we're putting this on the move info. Now, when we do the default thing, remember we had this default thing, and I am not sure if it's worth filling in this default rock stuff, but maybe we need to for correctness. Okay. If the mover is a rock, we're going to set these properties to just whatever's on the rock. So info.postTeleport rock move direction is rock.move direction. And skipping. However, again, one of these, for some reason, these are two different types because, like, I'm a bad person. So skipping direction is an enum, and move direction is a vector 3. Why? Because that's just how life is. So which one is the vector 3 move direction? Vector 2 direction that. Okay. Probably forgot. Nope. Okay. So now we need to set up a level that'll test this. And then it won't work because, like we did last time, we're storing these values, but we're not actually ever using them. So let me do a thing. We're going to set up a skipping stone, and I don't know what's the best way to do this. Let's make a big hole here, and let's put this here. Like, I don't know, man. We'll put this guy over here, and we're gonna push the rock this way, and we'll teleport it, and it'll go this way, right? Okay, so teleportable skipping stone here. Save. All right, so like, yeah. See, so. We also have undo problems, but the direction, let me slow down. I can set on the level some of these parameters, and I can make the rock skip slower so that, I don't know, it's like, because video capture is still very choppy on this new computer, you guys might not have even been able to see that, I don't know. Okay, so the rocks skip for 0.25 now every frame, very much slower. Okay, so I'm going to push it and toggle it. And so it should change movement direction when it teleports, but it doesn't. Because like I said, we did not put that back. So many puzzles involving this are now broken. Is G-Sync on? Try turning that off. Well, how do I do that? Let me go into NVIDIA. Oh, look, my 30-day trial for evaluation purposes is not working anymore. Well, if we have to debug using that, I'm going to have to figure out my frickin' serial number, which I don't know where it is. NVIDIA control panel. G-Sync. No G-Sync. Okay. I don't know if OBS is going to lose tracking now. I don't know if you guys could still see the stream. Okay, it looks like the stream is still going. Okay, good. So now let's run the game again. See if that helped at all. Nope. Still choppy as hell. Still terrible. I don't know what to say, people. Computers just don't work. This worked fine on my 3-year-old computer. It doesn't work on this one. Do I need the features for the professional version? Yes, because I am a game development professional. I am not a game development community member. I'm a game development professional. It was fine earlier today. No, it's been broken on this ever since I started streaming on this new computer. You just didn't notice or something. It's been broken the whole time. It looks totally smooth for me. It looks bad for you. Now, interestingly, our vector to direction is messed up, and I want to debug that, but Visual Studio won't run now unless I stop the stream and dig up a serial number so Microsoft can go jump off a cliff. Maybe this is when I install Remedy instead. I don't know. I'm not going to stop this stream to install Remedy, but I might just switch to it as opposed to digging out the serial number for the frickin' 17th time. Like, All right, so I kind of want to debug this though, because this is bad. We can do some simple things to debug this. So here are some tricks that we can do without a debugger. So first of all, where is this function? Right? Oh, we have 2 overloads, but it's going to be the vector3 one. It's in skipping stones. So I'm going to go there. And we're going to do this trick. Oh, actually, guys. I don't need to do this trick. I have something better than this now, okay? We have secret technology in this programming language that we have not disclosed. And you guys, because you're tuned in on the stream today, may get to see the secret technology. I don't remember if I made a function for this already. I don't think I do. I have one I thought I did one. There we go. Okay. Secret technology. So there we go. So the reason this is secret technology is it doesn't rely on debugging symbols. This is a language level stack trace that has like the pointers to the procedures and is very fast to walk and knows all kinds of like information and has a unique hash that you could use to look it up in a hash table. We're just printing out the nodes here. Oh, if you guys are only whelmed, you have no idea how good this is to actually have. You have no idea. So the whole idea behind this is it is not operating system dependent in any way. These are just data structures. Just like you have access to type information at both compile time and runtime, and they're just data structures that you can manipulate like anything else, you also have that for a stack trace. So like what these are is, I'll show you what these are because you guys are special and you're here. So there's this thing called a stack trace node. And on the context, there is a linked list of these. If you opt to turn them on at compile time, which you can do that. And so on the context, which of course gets passed to every procedure, you can start walking this linked list. And this linked list is a back trace of these nodes. And that's just a data structure. You could say, well, it's this procedure with this hash at this call depth from this line number. And you can use these things to hash even further. This is sort of like a fast hash that's not too expensive to generate at runtime. But actually, you could hash all four of these things together because these are guaranteed to be deduplicated. So, this thing tells you the name of the procedure and where it is in the source code. And this is the function pointer. So it's like way better than an operating system stack trace if you opt to use it. What % done of your next game is it worth to get the fundamental technology improved? I don't know. It depends on what the technology improvement is and how helpful it will be. Anyway, so we're in vector to direction, right? That's being called by this other overload of vector to direction, which I guess is the vector 2 overload, line 20 of skipping stones, right? Yeah, no, oh, it's vector 3 calling vector 2, not the other way around. Okay, so that's great. And that is being called from use mirrors. Now that's pretty weird because it's... So the output of use mirrors, line 331. Oh, so there's two line numbers here. This is the procedure info line number, tells you where that procedure starts. But then the actual node that you get tells you the line number of the calling site, which is line 517. So we have this. So we're saying get reflected vector. Okay, this is not good because it just sort of means this function has been doing the wrong thing behind our back, and it just kind of happened to work out, I guess. But we don't really want that. So that could lead to bugs in gameplay and stuff. So this we need to look at get reflected vector because it's been wrong even before today. Or what? I mean, maybe the function is not wrong, but it's being used wrong. So Philip Trudeau is asking, so there are these nodes allocated statically and then filled in when a trace is requested. They are, the procedure infos are allocated statically and are in read-only space. Let me, so there's these things, there's only one per procedure. These things are dynamic. So these things get allocated on the stack right before the procedure call. Actually, I think there's actually just a fixed stack reservation for this, so the stack space doesn't have to keep being reallocated. I think there's just space on the stack for this. I forget how I did it. Well, of course, LLVM is going to do it however it does it, but in our backend, it just kind of lives in one spot. Yeah. And then these get filled in every time you call the procedure, which sounds a little bit expensive. I mean, that's why it's a debugging facility that you can turn off, but then all of these are pretty fast values to compute. The slowest one is the hash, and that's still pretty fast. Are there any runtime costs for doing the stack trace? Yes, but you know, it's proportional to the cost of calling a procedure anyway, so it's not that bad. Okay. So why are we getting this? I was going to look at this procedure. Get reflected vector, and I don't know why it needs a Mirage now. It's probably looking up some information on the Mirage that, oh, because we have this outgoing orientation. The Mirage records, because we do this mirror trace, and we sort of like bounce a quaternion off of every mirror, and that gives us like a tangent frame that travels along the beam. And so at the end of the beam, we have an orientation like relative to the beginning of the beam. And so then we're saying, okay, whatever the vector was at the beginning, we rotate that to get the direction at the end. Now, I am not sure why this is a problem, but let's detect it. So let's just say if dir.x, let's say absx is abs of dir.x, right? No check-in. If absx is greater than or equal to 0.69, right? And absx is less than 0.72. We're just detecting this 0.7071 situation. And we're going to say error get reflected vector gave us something non-axis aligned. Print v is whatever. Print final outgoing ORI is whatever. I feel like it's the final outgoing ORI that's going to be messed up. And I'm not sure why, because it's a 90-degree rotation. But whatever. We're going without a debugger today, because that's how we're rolling. I'm just too angry at Visual Studio anymore. All right. So, okay, we maybe can turn off this stack trace. because it's probably not helping. Okay, so here we go. Get reflected vector gave us something non-axis aligned. Oh, because the input is not axis aligned. That's not good. Okay, well, that was not the problem that I expected. Let's just do a sanity vector rock.move direction, right? And sanity vector is going to be this. And let's get rid of our stack. Where was our stack trace? Print stack skipping stones. All right. Oops. You got to name your variables consistently. And there's no Mirage anymore. Vector is non-axis aligned. Whatever. Sanity vector, no rock, because I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. We don't have a rock yet, but we do here. Okay, so I do this, and that's not going to fix anything. That just tells us, well, bam. So why? Our thing, whatever is computing move direction is just wrong. It should not ever be a diagonal for a skipping stone, I don't think. That said, move direction I think is used for when you're pushing something around. Like it's used, see how the rock, I'll slow down time a little bit. See how it like tilts up when I push it? I think it's just used for that. And so something is just like messing it up. All right, well, not that many people set this. I guess one thing sets it. That's great, that's cleaner than it used to be. So, well, we're gonna sanity check the thing that sets it. Move info.delta. What is this move info? This is when we add a move. Oh, because we're, okay. I see what the bug is. So the problem is this is a teleport. And because it's a teleport, like, okay, let me show you guys. Let's slow down time real slow. So the reason it's 0.7071, etc., is, see when this rock gets south of this mirror, we're teleporting it actually diagonally, right? 2 left and 2 west and 2 north to be consistent, right? And this comes into the transaction system as a move type teleport with a given start and end and a given delta. And a lot of the old code was very lazy about deltas, and I've gradually been cleaning that up over time because there's a difference between like the place that you're teleporting to versus what should be the direction for visual effects purposes. We were doing some of that stuff in today's earlier stream if you want to see some of that. So the problem is we are legit going diagonally. It's just a teleport. And if it's a teleport, you probably just shouldn't set the move direction. What this code was in here for is oh, if you issue a move transaction where somebody's like pushing the rock, then you should do this. And so I don't know how this got in. I guess this teleport was probably added. I don't think that teleport is right at all. So this is about, setting the move direction for, I think, animation purposes. And this one is about whether it should rotate when it skips. Oh, I know what it was. Okay. So skipping stones have this thing where they rotate 90 degrees per skip. And that should happen even if it's a teleport, I guess. That's just the rule is, maybe it should rotate 0 in a teleport, but right now it rotates 90. So I added this teleport exception, but I didn't check this. I didn't think about this. Or maybe I was like, oh, it doesn't matter because move info isn't going to be used for a teleport. Yeah, we got it. Or we got to check that. That's all. Now that's still not going to fix our whole thing about making the rock skip in the right direction. That is just going to make us not get an error message now, right? So I'm going to teleport this and no error message. So that's good. I'm not sure if that ever could cause any other problem besides an error message, but it's not good to have error messages when you're trying to figure things out. Okay, but what I should do is look at who uses move direction, because it might be used. Oh, you know what? When you start skipping, it might be used. In which case, if you teleported and then started skipping off the teleport, your direction would be wrong if we don't set it to something. That said, you shouldn't be able to start skipping off of a mirror teleport because that's just not, it's not possible, I don't think. You can already be skipping on a mirror teleport. But I don't think you could start skipping. And anyway, what we are about to do is going to change that anyway, because we're going to set the move direction to be this thing that we cached away on the transaction. All right. So remember, we had our post teleport variables, and we set them here when we physically move. And I really should make a cleanup note. I am pretty sure this is happening every frame after we have physically moved, but whatever, so far it doesn't matter. Okay. So if e.entity_type is a rock, rock is down e_rock, and so then I had a thing. I guess I didn't paste it anywhere. So we had a thing where, like, if the rock was skipping, we did one thing, otherwise we did another thing, and that thing was last teleport is skippable. I don't remember how this worked, and it might be broken anyway now. But if rock.skipping, then we said rock.skipping direction is info.post teleport rock skipping direction, right? And then I think we just, no matter what, set the move direction, and just people will not pay attention to the move direction otherwise. Type mismatch. Oh yeah, because we made both of these directions. Direction to vector finger. Oh, it's called get direction vector. I get these weird things in my head where I always think that this is the name of a procedure, and it's not. No matter how many times I get it wrong. Maybe that just means that's what it really should be called. Okay, push, teleport. Yeah, baby, look at that. Okay, so now we have this weird undo thing that I'm not going to debug tonight, where it's hard to undo past that point where it teleports. I'm not sure why, but anyway. So we're going to slow down time. We're going to look at it. So it's kind of like hanging motionless right now when it's teleporting, and later on we will we'll do something more with that. Like we'll have it wobble in space or have more of a visual effect or something. Right now it just kind of freezes for a little bit. And you'll note that it's still not totally perfect, like, because we have some offset from the square that it has, right? And if I teleport, it ends up in the target square. And the reason why maybe that's not great is if I slow down huge, so you'll see here once it crosses into the square, the mirage for it is in a specific place that's still off center, but then I teleport and it's going to go to the center, right? And so that's a little bit non-perfect, but it's lower priority. Like, you know, the way that I work on games is I do the high priority things and I do lower priority things later. It does feel pretty bad in some of the puzzles to have this. Wow, I really slowed down time a lot. There we go. See how it popped to the middle? Now that maybe doesn't feel that bad when it pops forward like that, but it could also pop backward. So watch, we'll like this. We'll do this at full speed in a second. So this will also pop to the middle. See? And that, whenever you make something pop backward, it looks like more of a stutter than if you pop in the direction of motion, right? So like, whoops, I missed. It's hard to like watch and do it at this, yeah. I mean, it doesn't look that bad, honestly, but it is a thing. It's a thing. Anyway, someone says, goodness gracious, the levels of indentation. If you think 4 indents is a lot, then show me your awesome game that you made, bro. I guess we're up to 5 here. But like 1 is just the fact that we're in a procedure, so that one kind of doesn't count. It was when there were like 10 or 12 or more on screen? What has a lot of indents? I mean, that has a little bit more. I don't love indentation, so, oh, this one maybe? No, because we weren't looking at that code. I don't tend to like this kind of thing. Like once we get this far indented, I find ways to not indent. I just didn't do that here for some reason. Here in part it's because we want these values, and also like this one is expensive to compute, so we only want to do it if we have this. I guess we're not actually using the value of squeezes, so we could do this and whatever. It just gets less readable. Anyway, I don't totally love high indentation. This is pretty high for me, I feel like. This is kind of normal. You know, this is generally what my code looks like, right? So I'm not sure, was it, what else were we looking at? I don't know. If you see it again, let me know, or maybe I'll notice it. This is a little more. But part of this is like, oh, this is just a locally declared function. So these indents here don't really count because like this is sort of the same as if this is at top level. Like, you know, what do you count, right? This is at the same depth as that, and this like does count, but yeah. There's a huge run of close brace at the end that made it obvious. Okay, I will try to keep an eye out. I don't remember what that was. Anyway, so we solved the teleport. Okay, well, we should also test the move direction thing, which is going to be a little tweakier to test, but we can do it. We're just going to move the stuff in this level over to here. Remember, I said the move direction is the thing that made the push tilt. So like if I take a teleportable object like this, and then I push it, right? I picked this instead of the small skipping stone because it's obvious. You know, we're not doing the Mirage doesn't have the tilt in it and stuff, which isn't good. We really should, I'll write that down. Okay, that's a low priority thing too. Anyway, so if we slow this down and we start pushing this into the square, then when it crosses the square, we would like the tilt to be in the teleport direction here. Wait. Okay, that didn't actually, okay. So what happens there, maybe this doesn't matter and it's untestable, actually. We could test this in a very convoluted way. Okay, so what happened there is it waited until the move was done to do the teleport, and the reason is that under normal circumstances, in this game, we wait until your move is completed until we do another move. Unless it's considered a real-time action where waiting until the end of the move would cause you to miss, right? And so one example of that is teleporting a stone that's skipping across the water. It's like, well, it might already be a little bit past the middle of the square, which means it's en route to the next square. And so if you wait till the next move, you know, you might miss it, right? And there's various scenarios like that. So those things are handled a little bit out of band. But pushing this boring old rock that is not skipping is not considered an urgent action. The way that I could make it an urgent action is by like spamming down like another one of these so that the player will teleport also. The problem with that is that he'll still be pushing the rock. Oh, this is kind of interesting. I wonder if you can make a level out of this. Like that it matters that you're pushing and you still are pushing. It's not coming to mind right away how you would make that exactly matter, but it might. This game is very interesting, so maybe there's a way to do it. Anyway, slowing it down, and boom. Oh, that's not considered urgent either. I guess it's just like skipping stones and other things that move autonomously, like if something's on a rover or something. Okay. Well, we're just, since this is so hard to make happen, we're just going to say it's low priority. Like, it's actually probably literally impossible to make it happen given these constraints, so I'm not going to worry about it. Usually it's better to refactor into smaller functions. I disagree with that very strongly. More functions is worse than more indentation, usually. Unless you're legitimately going to call those functions from multiple places, but if you were going to do that, they would already have been functions, right? So that's an illusion of code cleanliness. You're just like pushing, it's like sweeping your floor, but you're just pushing the dust around the room, right? The dust used to be in the indentations. Now it's in having more of a call graph that people reading the code have to understand. Like, who calls this function? Under what circumstances, right? What's the global state when this function is called, and so forth. And then more maintenance, because you have to pass in all these frickin' parameters. And then if you change a local variable, you have to pass more parameters. It's not a good solution. It's not a solution, actually. It doesn't solve anything. So the real thing to do if you have a lot of indentation and you don't like it is to maybe change what's going on. So if you have a loop, one common pattern is you'll have a loop with a lot of nested ifs inside the loop. And the ifs are checking conditions successively. And instead of doing that, you could just continue, right, if one of those conditions is false, and fall through if it's true. And that gives you a much less indented structure. I way prefer that. But yeah, don't make functions for no reason. It's not a good idea. And people in school will not tell you that. And probably a lot of like how to program whatever language books will not tell you that, but it's the truth. You don't want a lot more functions than you need. This could possibly influence speedruns. I don't know if there are going to be speedruns in this game in that way. There might be move count speedruns, but I don't know if there would be a timed speedrun. It's just not really that kind of game. Oh, you don't mean built into the game. You mean like what casual speedrunners might do? Yeah, maybe. But like you're only seeing this, like the scale of this only seems to matter when the time is slowed down anyway. Like if I push teleport, it's like that, right? It doesn't, it's delayed till the push ends, but it's such a small amount of time that nobody cares. The game is tuned fast, right? The game is tuned so that if you know what you want to do, you go tap, 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 and you get there, right? It's not, you don't wait for your dude to walk around. Objects would help with passing too many parameters? No, because that's even worse. Because instead of then having a parameter that the compiler knows it doesn't need to have necessarily real storage, now you're putting it on something where if there's aliasing, the compiler doesn't know who could even reference it. And then God only knows if like you heap allocate that thing. Like, no, objects is not a solution either. It's every one of these steps makes things more complicated, and any extra complication is not worth it. It is not worth it, right? All other things being equal, you should have less indentation. That I agree with. But you're starting to suggest solutions that actually have very high costs if you're accurately paying attention to cost. And so you're paying high costs in order to remove indentation, which doesn't have that high of a cost, honestly. So be careful. That's all. Be careful with that. You can't tell if people are trolling, suggesting these practices. They're probably not. I mean, these are things that are taught. Like, if somebody tells you this, I mean, maybe they're trolling, but it's quite possible they're not, because this is what a lot of places teach. A lot of schools teach this, and a lot of books teach this, and a lot of YouTube videos teach that, right? And so a lot of people believe that that's the best thing to do. I've heard worse things, right? People have come on this stream and said that you shouldn't ever have a function more than 10 lines long. And if you do, you should refactor it into smaller functions. That's like one of the worst programming ideas that I've ever heard. But I know it's real because I've seen it given as real advice on the internet multiple times. That's terrible advice. And, you know, obviously given by people who don't like write actual real software that solves challenging problems. What's the most hilarious advice? I probably don't remember. I mean, I've seen some very silly recommendations. I don't know, though. I'm glad you enjoy the stream. I hope your wife doesn't become overworked in the near future. Keep her safe. Yeah, not only do you have to scroll all over everywhere to understand what's going on, it's like you have to hold this call graph in your head and like what the preconditions and postconditions are for all those procedures. And it's like, you know, forget it. Just, yeah. All right. Let's stop talking about clean code recommendations. You know, the stream's been an hour. I have to wake up real early in the morning, so we might be kind of almost done. We made some progress. Let me check this in, and then we'll start on the next major thing, which is we're going to completely break turning, because turning here is handled by something external to the transaction system, and we're going to put it into the transaction system. And then once that's in the transaction system, then maybe we can fix turning with stuff on your head, right? Which right now, the box just like teleports, but should eventually smoothly rotate. And so that's actually very challenging, and that by itself is going to have multiple parts to it. But the more we do now, the less we have to do later. God, this game is so silly. It's going to be a really good game in terms of how much crazy stuff happens in it, but yeah, it's silly. Only in business apps where speed didn't matter. Speed always matters. I'm going to give a speech about why speed always matters sometime soon, but yeah. Okay. You mean that rock wobble when it lands? Yeah, that'll probably get better too. We'll probably add some particle effects, and you know, that's just a little procedural thing that I put together. It's kind of snapping on the border there. Like when it crosses onto land, it's not doing that correctly. Watch this. That didn't used to be a problem. See that? Oh, it's just the height is not interpolating. It's kind of bouncing, and then it drops from the bounce. So we're going to, you know, all those little details, I think, we'll iron out later. Maybe not that much later because, well, I think, you know, the priority is like fix the things that break gameplay first, and then fix cosmetic things. And even though turning seems cosmetic, we're working on it because it does matter for gameplay. And we need it to be in the transaction system. So, yeah. Sometimes you have limited time, money, budget, though, so corners need to get cut. I mean, yes, but also that's the excuse everybody uses, and most programmers are not that good. So if you want to be better, you have to use that excuse less. You know what I'm saying? You gotta hold yourself to standards, or you won't get better. Right? That's how you improve at any activity. And so saying, "Oh man, there's just not that much time," it's sort of an excuse. And if you give yourself that excuse, then you don't need to take the time. And there you go. Which version of transaction systems is this? Well, this is the only like serious transaction system version that I ever did. All the previous versions were trying to avoid going to a full transaction system, which actually I shouldn't have done, because this actually isn't really more complicated than some of the other crazy stuff I was doing. And it's more robust and easier to understand. But I would say this is probably around version 5 of the movement system for this game. Maybe 6. Like, it's hard to remember what some of the earliest ones were. You think there is too much premature optimization? I disagree. You're saying less programmer time is more important, but the problem is programmers are drowning in spending time on stupid things. And because they're doing that, they can't program that much. Part of it is how long compilers take to compile and link. If the people making those compilers and those linkers had taken speed seriously, they would run 10 or 100 times faster than they do today, and all programmers would be much more efficient, right? All programmers basically have a leech on the front of their face, eating a certain amount of their time every day. And I really, it's kind of upsetting that people don't take that seriously. But the same thing is true of all software. Like when people go to a web page and it takes like 2 seconds to appear, like multiply that by everybody who goes to that web page to find out information about how to be safe, from a virus. Like these things have very large scale factors. And then they get really pathological when it takes 2 seconds to reload the web page and it doesn't load quite correctly because of some bug or ever, and then you have to load it again, and then you have to try changing some setting and then load it again. And like you type in your password and it wasn't right and it takes 2 seconds to load again. And before you know it, it's like 5 freaking minutes on this web page, that because the slowness changes the nature of your interaction with it. So I really don't have much tolerance for this. All right. So what do I do now? So let's go look at this. Actually, we're going to check in. And I'm starting to feel a little tired. So maybe we're just going to look at what to do and not necessarily do it yet. That's a good strategy sometimes. So we're going to commit. And we're going to say, what did we do? We did skipping stone direction changes are now handled by the transaction system. We have a no check-in, dude. What did I do? No check-in. Oh, this thing, this sanity vector. Who's calling that? We don't need that anymore. Nobody's calling it. Let's make sure we still compile, just to make sure nobody's really calling. Nobody's calling it. We don't need that sanity vector. Great. stream halted for a while and you had to reload the page for 10 seconds and it made you miss the last thing I said. Yeah, exactly. Do I have any links, resources, books I'd recommend to programming students? Aside from those ones that the robot just said, which are not about programming generally, they're usually just like math books or good things, good background to have. I don't know. Like, I'm not a big fan of what a lot of programming books teach these days, to be very honest about it. We're still getting occasionally some non-cardinal directions. I think that's just going to be, let's debug that. I think that's just going to be what happens when we teleport a motionless stone. Let's test that theory, right? So like, I think we saved the level. No, well, we've done a lot of things to this level. Let's go back and do something boring like this and this. And let's just teleport that. See if we, oh, we got an error message on level reset. And when we teleport. Okay, so the reason it's spewing is because, like I said, we're doing this thing every frame after the teleport. Like, honestly, since nobody uses this for anything anymore, okay, let's just check the length and only assign it. Okay, here's what we do. Here's what we do. Okay, it was this. This was the thing we were doing, but what is this other move direction thing up here? Wait. What are we? Okay, never mind. This is when we issue a move, right? This is when we use the post teleport things. So maybe both of these have this problem. Let's do this one first. So we have this move direction, and we will say, wait, no, it's not going to be the move direction. It's going to be the other one. It's going to be the calls to vector 2 direction. Why do I, let's visit this file. Okay, we don't call that here. All right, well, you know what? We're going to go back to our stack trace. I think it probably happens maybe from the same places as before, but I think there's two, yeah. I think there's two call sites. So let's just see. Where is this happening? Okay. I could make a nicer stack trace printer, but whatever. So this is vector 2 direction from make default teleport. Right, I forgot about that. So let's just do, okay. This is silly. Not really, it's not silly. Okay. If we actually have a vector, we do this, else we just say direction none. Hopefully when we turn direction none back into a vector, I mean, it doesn't really matter what we give, but I don't know if that function likes us when we do that. Okay, so it's still complained, but from a different place, from use mirrors, line 331. Right? Oh, call site is 570. That's the same one we were looking at before. So, you know what? Let's just make a vector to direction or none. Right? And that just tells us, look, we might return direction dot none from this. So that was in skipping stones, right? Vector to direction, right? So here we're going to go vector to direction or none. I could actually do a wacky thing where these are polymorphic. You know what? Okay. Sometimes people abuse programming language features. I kind of want to abuse a programming language feature here. Okay, so let me just write out what I would do in C++. I'd make a vector to direction or none, like we just did. I would say, if the length of the direction is less than some epsilon, that whatever we would hard code, we just say return direction dot none, right? Otherwise, we return vector, well, we'll just copy this line here. Okay, and that'll actually work, hopefully. Yeah. So the way that we could abuse the language, I'm not sure I really want to do this because this does have a compile time cost. But instead of doing this, we could say there's a compile time argument of allow none, right? Oh, I don't know if I do this with default. Maybe this works. I don't remember. No. Oh, wait. Okay, hold on, because I haven't changed these callers yet. I guess it does work. Okay, go me. So what this says is we have to know this at compile time, so this function will turn into a non-polymorphic function, with this being either false or true. And by default, it's false. And so this bakes down into two separate functions. And so the question is, and so then what this would look like is we would say, this. And in a sense, that's nicer because we don't have to have a separate entry point, but also we don't pay a runtime cost, right? If we didn't put this $sign here, then, okay, in a lot of programming languages, you could do this, but you're checking this Boolean all the time, right? And here it's like, oh, or sorry, runtime cost. Did I say compile time? Here we take a little bit of a compile time cost, but we have no runtime cost because we know when you call this function if this is false or true. And so this will get optimized out and you don't have to worry about it. And then, I don't know, that could be inline, right? I don't know if I actually want to do this, but you know. Is that implemented right now? Yes. I'm just deciding if I actually want to do this. Because I also, like paying compile time costs when you maybe shouldn't. Like, we're literally just avoiding an if statement with a small amount of math, which is not that big of a, it's not that big of a win, honestly. We're going to do it without the $sign for now. But we could do it with the $sign. So down here, we're going to say allow none is true. And then, and at the calling site, it would be the same. It'd be the same either way. So the question is, which one is better for understandability of the program? Do you want to have to read a different function name and that forces you to realize it might return direction.none? Or is this good enough? And is it better to have a smaller call graph? I like having a smaller call graph. I don't like multiplying the functions all over the place. So, especially given this is such a frickin' trivial function. Now, the weird thing is we don't accept allow none here right now, which if this was an API, that wouldn't be good, but I don't care because we don't use it. Anyway, so now we no longer have that problem. At least the syntax is such that the only change is one character. Yeah. So I can show you guys. Well, let me show you this example. Let me factor it out into a separate program so that you could see. We'll use this along with the stack trace, right? So let me go to foo, right? We're going to make a new program, and we're going to have main, and we're going to say A of true, A of false, right? B of true, B of false. And A and B are going to be almost the same. So we're going to have A is some function. We're just going to take one parameter, right? If param, we're just going to print param is equal to whatever, right? Okay. And then B is going to be like that too. The difference is going to be that B has this, and also that our print statement is different. Okay. So far, no big deal, right? So if I go here, let's make a new window. Let's get the compiler on our command line. You know compilation is fast when you kick off a full compile of your whole game just so that you could have this in your command line so that you don't have to type it. That's the kind of paradigm shift that happens when you have speed. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Oh, I'm in the wrong folder. All right. So this program, it does what you'd expect. Param is true, param is false, param is true, param is false. I can ask if it's constant. I can say print is constant, param is equal to whatever. This tells you if it's a compile time constant. You might not believe that, so we'll do something else in a second, but there you go. So in A, it's not constant, and in B, it is constant. So because it's constant, you can do various optimizations based on that value at compile time. Because it simply is known, right? You're not allowed to call this with a variable. So if I said like V is true, even that's illegal. I can't do that, right? So Oh, it didn't report the error correctly. It failed to compile, but it didn't report the error. That's a new, that used to work. That's a compiler bug. So we're going to have to debug that on a different stream. So the problem right now with the way that we test the compiler is we test successful programs to make sure they work, but we don't test to make sure that error messages work. So sometimes things that are supposed to generate error messages that are not correct programs, those decay because we don't have tests for them. So we're going to have to fix that. But the point, you at least see that compilation failed. So yeah, it's not great that it didn't generate an error message though. The reason compilation failed is you're just not allowed to do that with a non-constant. Oh, it might have failed due to the undeclared identifier, honestly. Like, oh no, that wasn't undeclared, never mind. Okay, so what can we do to prove this to you more? Well, we can say the stack trace, right? And instead of doing a full stack trace, we're just going to look at the current node, and we're just going to say print my address is whatever, right? And that's going to be node.procedure info, or node.info, what's it called? Procedure address, right? And now here's where we prove that this is actually happening, because so for A, we're going to get one address for both true and false. And for B, we're not. And we don't have like a word for like this proc or whatever. So if you try to refer to A or B by name, it's going to be a little bit weird because this one's polymorphic. It could refer to either value. And so that's why we're doing this, right? So you'll see two addresses for A and one for B, unless there's a horrible compiler bug. Yeah. Oh, wait. Are we printing the wrong thing? Why am I getting the same address for all of these? This might be broken. What is going on there? Oh, it says main. Oh God, it's because LLVM inlined this. I think we can forbid that by saying no inline here. Can we do this? No underscore inline. I don't know if LLVM obeys this. We can compile with the x64 backend. Yeah, it's LLVM. Let's just say -x64. All right. No, it's still different. Oh, because, okay. Duh. No, this isn't them being inlined. I'm sorry. They're not being inlined. We don't have we don't have the address for this function yet. To do that, we have to call a different function, because when you're in this function, the node for this function is not on the stack. So we're going to say print caller address. All right. So print caller address is going to go, there we go. That will work. Sorry, I had an explanation in my head for what was happening, and it was wrong. Let's do this back, LLVM backend. Okay, this is what I expect. So for A, in fact, let's print, just so that instead of printing my address, let's say address of whatever is whatever, and we're going to say node.info.name, because we have the name of the procedure and the address. All right. So there we go. So here we have the same address of A both times for both true and false. And here we have different addresses for B because we generated different functions for each version of param. Got it? Do we have regression tests independently of the applications? Yes. That's what I just got done saying. Okay, that end of side note. Hopefully that makes sense for everybody. We had a little speed bump where I got confused printing out the address, but that's all good, right? So this one is at 4C30, this one is at 4C30, so they're the same pointer, meaning it's the same code for this procedure for both calls. This is 850 and 6B0. These are in totally different places, because this actually turns into two different procedures. And so the whole reason I brought this up was because, like, oh, it would be cute to do that here, but I actually think it's abuse of a compiler feature. I don't think this is really necessary in this case. If this function was full of a bunch of if statements, or if we were doing some math like unavoidably, or if branches were really bad here or something, then it would make more sense to do it, but I'm not going to do it for now. Does this only work with Booleans? No, it works with any value that can be a constant. So you could do it with an integer, you could do it with floating point, you can do it with another procedure, you can do it with a type, right? Let's do it with a type, right? So we're going to say param is string. That's the type string. And we're going to call this with, well, we could call it with nothing, right? Because this has a default value. We could call it with a different type, like void. Or let's pick something else. Let's say, I don't know, int, that's another type, right? And although int will print something, float 64, that's a good type that everybody knows what that is, right? And what's our third type going to be? I want a user-defined type that, I know, type of main, right? Okay. Okay. So A is string, and then float 64, and then a procedure. We don't print out procedure types right now, but it actually knows the whole type of this procedure. It could print out the argument and return types if it wanted to. Of course, there aren't any because it's main, but whatever. Yeah. And then here, same thing, but these are all the same, and these are all three different. When is a $sign used for baking parameters, and when is it used for polymorphism? It seems a bit ambiguous. The answer is they are both polymorphism. The difference is just if the parameter is on the variable name, it means you need to know the value of the variable, but you know the type. If the parameter is on the right, it means you don't necessarily need to know the value, but you need to know the type, right? You could put a $sign on both. I mean, that's being a little bit gratuitous at that point, but you could do that. That's all. Can the language print stack traces on crash? Sure, but you know, for a serious game or something, you want to do your own version of that by hooking into the operating system, possibly. I don't know. Maybe not. But you can just bake that at a particular call site to get the performance. No need for polymorphism. Yes, that is also true. That's actually still polymorphism. It's just the declaration is not polymorphic. And most callers would never invoke polymorphism. Only that call site would, yes. Float 64 was interpreted as string? No. No. What this is saying is, this is a type, String happens to be a type. It could be anything else. It could be unsigned 32-bit number. Okay, this is a type. So if we call it with no arguments, then that is the type that we will use. Types are values. Like if you don't have experience in like a Lisp-like language or an interpreted language, this is going to be very confusing. If all you know is C or C++, this is going to be confusing. All right. Types are values in this language as well. So this has a value. This is a type. It's a variable whose type is type, and that currently has the default value of unsigned 32, which is a type, if you don't provide a different type, right? So here I can say, no, it's float 64, or I could say it's whatever the type of main is, right? So that's all. I mean, if you do Lisp, you know this, right? But if you do any functional language, you know this. If you don't, you should learn it because it's cool. Yeah. So to make this even more clear, so again, when we do like colon equals here, this is just invoking type inference. But you could put the type in between. So you could say this is a type, and that's perfectly acceptable, right? To clarify if you wanted to. You're saying, oh, this is a variable. The type of this variable is type, and the default value is string, right? And that might help someone who's new to this kind of programming language read that code. Is it possible to do something like identifier $$ type equals $ value? Not quite. Putting a $ on the value would be meaningless. You could put a $ here. You could put a $ here, but not on type. It would just be a variable name. You could put a $ variable name here. You could put one here. You can't put one here. I sort of said the wrong thing before. I said you could put it on the left or put it on the right, but I was probably highlighting this, which is not, that's actually not correct what I said. It's, you can put it on the variable name or on the type declaration for the variable. The equivalent, well, that's interesting. So I guess we have a little bit of a mix-up of syntax then, because if you wanted to say that a declaration has a constant value, i.e. that this has to be known at compile time, that's where you just put a colon here, which is something that happens in some other programming languages as well. I guess you could put $, like if we were being really consistent, but that starts to be syntactically very messy. So yeah, and it wouldn't quite mean the same thing, so I wouldn't go there. Are types represented as monotonically increasing integers for every type the compiler sees during compilation? No. They are represented as some integer size thing, which if you compile with type information built into your executable, which you have the option of disabling, but if you don't disable it, then it's actually a pointer to the type info struct for that type, which is also guaranteed to be unique. Except I'm not sure what we're going to do when you load dynamic libraries that have their own type infos. That's something I haven't figured out. But $ on the variable name already means this has to be constant. That's true. It would be like a redundant thing. It doesn't make any sense to put it on the right. Is this tangentially animation related? It is not really animation related. It's just that I was going to do a thing, and then I decided to go off on a tangent explaining the thing that I was going to do. I think we mostly did the animation stuff that we're actually going to do tonight. Is it possible to accidentally create two types that are identical, have the same type info struct values, but are different by equality? It depends on how you're what you mean by the same type info struct values. Because type info structs have like, pointers to constant data containing default values and stuff, and that'll never be the same for two different things. But you could have like two structs with the same name and the same members of the same types, but they live in different namespaces, and so they're allowed to have the same name. And those will have types that look the same, but they're not actually the same type, for example. You can do that with anything. You could have enums like that. Okay, since it's 10 p.m. and I'm starting to get a little tired, I think we're done. I think our debugging of that error message was the last animation thing we're going to do tonight, and we'll pick it up maybe not tomorrow, but maybe the day after, with doing the player turning thing, which is going to be big maybe, and maybe it won't be. Maybe sometimes I think something is going to be big and don't do it for a long time, and then I finally do it and it's easy. So maybe that'll be one of those. It's quite possible, but I'll be very happy to have done it because, man, I've been wanting to do that for a long time. So we'll see. So fix error message involving non-cardinal skipping stone directions. So really rock directions, generally rock directions. Any like final on topic questions about what we have been doing here? Don't you get an error if you try to declare an argument with : : I believe you do. Yeah. Have I seen the paper about the complexity theory of witness puzzles? Yeah, I saw that one. How much functional program do I use? Approximately 0. I'm not really a big fan of using multiple programming languages, period. I don't think it's a good idea in most contexts. I think you should pick a language and use it. If you have person, first name string, last name string, and company name string, industry string, is person equal to company or not? They are not equal. You will get a compile time error if you ask, is person equal to company? Is it possible to modify the asked by accessing the nodes inside the const functions? You can do that by other mechanisms in the programming language. You wouldn't do that with this kind of thing. But yeah, you can do that from your metaprogram. You'll be able to do it from macros eventually. It's just I haven't done that part yet. So you can only do it from the metaprogram right now. Any news on when I'm likely to expand the number of testers? Pretty soon, honestly. It's just... right now I'm working on the game. As soon as I go back to working on the compiler, well, now we have a new compiler bug that we want to fix. It's probably easy to fix. And then there's a different one. There's, every once in a while, because of the out of order compilation, there ends up being like spurious compilation errors where the compiler just doesn't compile correctly, but it only does it like 1 out of 100 times. So I need to make that happen. And I need to... It results in a crash sometimes. So I need to figure out how to get core dumps working on Windows because I haven't done that in forever, and just run it in a loop and get it to core dump after like the 1000th time or whatever, and then debug that. And then as soon as that's done, that'll be the release when we add more people to the beta. So are structs incomparable? You would expect something like that to come up. Say if you have a type parameter function, you need to check if the input is person. No, you can do that. You can say is the type you're bringing up two totally different scenarios, right? I can say in A here, if param is equal to float 64, print, we got a float 64. Like, that's sort of what you said in the second part of the question, if I'm understanding, but that's unrelated to comparing structs, right? Unless I misunderstood the question. Oh, he means comparison of the types. Wouldn't he just, okay. I thought you meant comparing the values of the structs. Yes. You can compare any two types and they will only compare. So I misunderstood the first question, not the recent one. You can compare any two types and they will compare as true if and only if, well, if they're both struct types, they will compare as true if and only if they're exactly the same struct. Yeah. I thought you were asking about comparing the values of two different struct types. I mean, we can do that right now. So we can go here. Let's comment out all this stuff. We'll go person is a struct, name is a string, and address is a string, and company is a struct, name is a string. Let's even put it address as a string. These will not be the same struct type, right? So, well, let's say print. I could just do this, right? And then I could do, instead, I could say, P is a person, C is a company, right? P.name is hello or Steve, and C.name equals, I don't know, what's a good company? TPC Reports, Inc. Or TPS Reports. What am I doing? So, so I could say print type of P is this, right? And type of P. I can do that same thing for C. And then I could say, are they equal? Right? So all these are legal to do. So we could do them. And so the types are not equal, or person is not equal to company. Let's just, I was being cute here, but there you go. So person is not equal to company. Type of P is person, type of C is company, and you can ask what the types are and if they're equal, and it's false. Yes, indeed, Emacs syntax highlighting is slow. You are correct. And I just spilled some water on myself, which indicates the end of the evening, I believe. That is the official indicator. What does type of B yield? Does it differ between the two versions of the function? No, that is a good point. So here's a different trick that we could do. Okay, let's comment out all this stuff. Let's say we have this thing called procedure of call that gives you the actual function that you would use if you did a certain call, but it doesn't do the call. So let's go. First is procedure of call B of. Let's change this back to a bool because it's easier to think about, right? The type version was cute, but like this is a Boolean again now, right? Okay, these are both going to be Booleans. Okay, procedure of call B of true, right? And second is going to be B of false, right? So print first is whatever. We're just going to print the values, right? And then print second is whatever, right? Okay, so, oh wait, I left some of the old code in somehow. What's going on? Oh, because, right. This doesn't make sense anymore now that it's a Boolean. That's what happened. All right. So these are two different procedures. That's not surprising because that's the same thing that we showed before by doing the stack trace. We're just doing it a different way. We're saying, what's the pointer to this procedure and what's the pointer to that one? And they're actually different, right? If we change it to A, they'll be the same, hopefully, right? If everything's working. Yeah, so for A, they're both the same. For B, they are not the same. So now, though, you're saying, what are the types of these things, right? And the problem is, I don't think the print statement, like I said, prints procedure types in detail. But, OK, so let's say print type of first is whatever. So we're going to print those two, and it's just going to say procedure for both of them. Because I don't really print. I probably should just print out the whole type. People are going to want that. I just haven't done it. So if I didn't have to wake up early in the morning, we would now go do that. But I have to wake up early in the morning. So type of first is whatever. Type of second. Are they equal? I think they should be. Yeah. So does that make sense to everybody? Are there any final on-topic questions, either on this or on the animation stuff that we were talking about before, as we approach the 2-hour mark? You think I wrote B? Oh, did I goof? Oh, no, this is correct. You're saying I used B here and here? That's correct. Because what we actually want to do, we're showing that this polymorphs to two different procedures for different values of the parameter. That's what we're demonstrating here. And we actually could go further than this, right? So we can go TI first is type info of first, right? I do the same for second. And then we say, we can start printing that because these are type info procedures that have a bunch of stuff. So type info type of first and second. Right? So you see both of these, they're actually the same type. They have the same type table index. They both have no arguments and no returns. And you might say, wait, no, you're wrong. It has an argument, but it doesn't because that argument got polymorphed away when we baked it. So the actual procedure that we call at runtime has 0 parameters. And so if I do this same thing, if I go back and change this to A, now it'll have 1 parameter. See, count as 1. Because it actually has a runtime parameter, whereas this has no runtime parameters. If that makes sense. What happens if you take the type of a procedure with $t? I mean, when? So the only time $t is really legal is in an argument list to a procedure. You can't like bust out a $t down here. That's not a thing. If you executed this at compile time, would B have one parameter? No, it would be the same. At compile time, the steps are the same as at runtime. In fact, we make everything, we don't do tricky things where things behave differently at compile time because you don't want that. You want your code to be the same. So they're equal because they both compile to an argumentless procedure which match on type but not on function. Yeah. Just like anything, in C, you could have different functions that have different function pointers, right? Different addresses where they're stored, where the instructions are stored, but that have the same argument and return value types, and it would be legal, right? So for B here, we can start adding more parameters, right, that we're not even going to use. We're going to say some name is a string and some temperature is a float, right? That's totally fine, and it'll still, right? That'll still work as long as I call the procedure correctly. And so now, the runtime version of this procedure has 2 arguments, right? But these types still match, right? They're both procedures with 2 arguments. The first argument is type string. The second argument is type float. They have 0 return types, 0 return values, right? So all that is what's happening. All right, thank you everybody for coming by. We've already rated people, so we're not going to raid anyone tonight. We're going to let you wander off your own way, going wherever you want to go, doing whatever you want to do. Thank you for coming by. It's unlikely that we do a stream tomorrow. Could happen, but unlikely. And then maybe we'll do one on Sunday. Something like that. Is today Friday? I don't even know anymore. Yes. So yeah, it's quite possible we'll do a stream Sunday. Thank you for coming by, and good luck programming things if you're a programmer. And we will continue doing this turning move transaction stuff later on.